The Quebec government is facing a new challenge, trying to contain the pandemic, violence over the Montreal area's new earlier curfew. Video into us last night from Old Montreal. Hundreds of people, most of them young, many without masks. They'd all crowded into the neighborhood in defiance of the new rule that would have had them off the streets at 8 p.m. The province has rolled the curfew back an hour and a half from 9:30 p.m. where it had been. Quebec Premier François Legault calls the earlier curfew in Montreal and Laval a precaution to stop the spread of the most contagious variants pushing up cases in the province. John Northcott is going to lead our coverage of all of this. John, the scene that unfolded last night. Let's look at more video for us this morning.
Yeah, indeed, Heather. We can show you the extra video that we're getting as well and tell you that this morning there will be some sweeping up to do with what we understand were dozens of plate glass windows broken by the protesters, a number of garbage fires set as well that police put out with extinguishers. And we're getting word this morning from Montreal Transit authorities that 3 buses were damaged in the events that took place last night. However, they are quick to point out their personnel, their employees, were not injured in any of the damage that was done to the buses. But this is a situation where you have the chanting coming from the crowd, freedom for the young. This with the potential fines between $1,000 and $6,000 as they took to the streets. This assessment being made of all that's gone on there from Dr. Christopher Labos just a few minutes ago. Have a listen.
Lack of self-awareness that has to go into that, to not realize how tenuous the situation is, to start chanting things like free the young, when you realize at the beginning of this pandemic, many senior citizens who are living in long-term care facilities weren't allowed to go outside, weren't allowed to leave their rooms for several months. I mean, so it's very, very frustrating to see people do this, because it really shows that they really haven't grasped the scope of the pandemic that we're dealing with and how really dangerous this could be.
And that danger being those variants, and that's why the Premier in a preemptive move, simply because other areas have been more severely affected by a spike, but the concern being it could head to the metropolitan Montreal area, hence let's dial that curfew time back to that. As for people taking to the streets, the health minister has said that he thinks this is a small minority and the majority of the population understand what authorities are trying to do to fight this virus.
But Johnny, it is not lost on some on social media that the young people who are angry at the government are taking it out on small businesses that have already been hurt so badly through this pandemic. So lots of talk about that today. We are also following another angry protest against pandemic measures in Alberta, John.
Yeah, and this has been a slow fuse that has been burning for months, Heather, in terms of the church that decided to hold services and resulted in the pastor doing significant jail time, 35 days, eventually coming out and paying a fine. But let's listen to what took place outside the barricades that now surround the church yesterday. So we can tell you that an organization that supports the GraceLife Church says that these were not their parishioners that were there. Still, number of people there tearing down the barricades, others of the protesters putting the barricades back up and assisting police, but their concerns seem to be over the, they say, rights for people to worship despite the restrictions enforced by health authorities, also acting out against, they say, government, the media, police, communism, vaccines, and tyranny generally. Concerns from the local First Nation, the Enoch Cree Nation, the chief putting out a media release and saying that over 100 people were actually on the nation's land and that his personal vehicle was damaged in all of this. So as that protest and that long-standing dispute with health authorities is underway, we can show you the latest figures from the province of Alberta, and you can see it there in terms of active cases. Alberta, with the unfortunate aspect there that they are leading the way in terms of active cases of COVID per 100,000 for the population. Still, despite this, the Premier promising that better days are ahead and not too far away either. Let's listen.
Once the vaccines catch up to the variants, we absolutely can get back to normal this summer. We anticipate that we can get to something like 70% protection of the population, either through first and second doses and or immunity acquired through natural infection. I believe we're going to have a Calgary Stampede. We're going to have outdoor events. We're going to have most of these restrictions lifted gradually through May and June.
So a few snapshots there on the state of play of this pandemic in various areas across this country. Heather?